All about syncing the nascent but burgeoning adolescent priorities with the mature parental concern for safety and propriety. It's quite different from the battle of wills with toddlers throwing a tantrum. No longer does "because I said so" work. With teenagers, there's a lot more of negotiation, a giving and taking, and a mutual goal setting. I could tell you many fresh stories that I'm learning day in and day out from raising my own teenagers, but that requires further permission and even more nuanced alignment of intentions. So I will illustrate with a story from my own teenage years. As a growing teen, I was always hungry and well acquainted with the ravenous hole that lived inside of me looking to be filled. I remember one fateful night. I was 14 or 15 when I loaded up my plate with a mound of pasta from the pot at the stove, and I strode over to the table to add a healthy topping of spaghetti sauce and meatballs. My mom stopped me and pointed out just the absurd amount of pasta on my plate and suggested, "Well, honey, you might start with a smaller portion and then have seconds if you're still hungry. That way it'll be warm." "No," I affirmed her. "I'm going to eat it all. I'm really hungry. I'm starving." I wasn't starving. "Okay," she relented, "but you're not leaving the table until you eat it all. And I mean it this time. As you mature, you must make informed and competent decisions. You will eat it all, even after it gets cold." Now, her warning, and perhaps more importantly, her relenting, should have shown me a doorway into a greater understanding of self. But I was not listening, and I did not see the threshold that I was passing. Because I was hungry, and a teenager, and I thought I knew best. I smiled as I sprinkled the Parmesan cheese onto that mountain of spaghetti on my plate. I won't belabor the story anymore because you know how it already ended, with me there sitting at the table for 1, 2, 3 hours or so, protesting about the unfairness of it all. It's just not fair. But as I left the table, with not only an overly filled stomach, but the bitter taste of consuming a valuable lesson at the cost of my pride. And it was that day that that old adage, "your eyes are bigger than your stomach," became more than words to me. It was the beginning of an internal introspection and conversation with myself, a reflection about what I really needed. Not too akin to the reflection that happens in today's parable. While this parental teenage engagement did involve an alignment of wills, the story I shared was really a story about capacity. Yes, the literal capacity of one's stomach, but it's matched up against the rapacious capacity of the heart for greed, which is adultery, says Colossians. These days, I often find myself in endless conversations about capacity and capacity building, related to everything from institutions to economics to electronics. And when I'm not talking about capacity, I'm getting messages from Google reminding me that imminently my storage of photos or inbox is about 90 or 98% full, and soon I'll be able to receive no more new messages, which sounds a bit like a promise to me. I'm tempted to kind of go over that 100% and see what happens. If your emails bounce back, just call me. These warnings come with an easy solution, of course, of adding storage just with a few more dollars a month. And this is the world we live in. Worries about capacity, worries about storage. I mean, if you look around the road when you're driving, you're going to see many folks out there in large SUVs, Escalades, and Denali's, or what other big, encompassing word you can think of, vehicles, or turbocharged Ford F-150s. If you look closely, you'll notice one thing. All of them are empty except for the driver. All of them those drivers that is, are enchanted with the prospect of possessing enough capacity to move all their stuff whenever they need to do it. We are no different than the rich man in today's parable. We find ourselves running on that relentless treadmill of accumulation and consumption. We work hard to be successful and make more money. We get a raise, we buy a new car, bigger house, so we can fill that house with more belongings. Sometimes we find ourselves renting additional capacity at some specially built climate-controlled storage units on what used to be farmland. It's absolutely comical. Indeed, the late comedian George Carlin, famous, of course, for those 7 words you can't say. If you don't know them, you can go to the Comedy Center downstairs in the Blue Room. They've got pictures and all kinds of video to tell you all about those 7 words that I don't say from the pulpit. But he also had a brilliant sense of satire. In one classic monologue, he depicts the obsessive accumulation of material things and that modern anxiety for which is both the cause and the result. He says, "You got your stuff with you? I bet you do. Guys have their stuff in their pockets. Women have their stuff in their purses. Stuff's important. You got to take care of your stuff." And I'm thinking he's saying the word stuff, but it's Carlin, so maybe it's a different S word there. You got to have a place for your stuff. That's what life is all about, trying to find a place for your stuff. That's all your house is, really, a place to keep your stuff. If you didn't have so much stuff, you probably wouldn't need a house. You could just walk around all the time and enjoy the beauty of the world. A house is just a pile of stuff with a cover on it. You see that when you're taking off in an airplane. You look down and you see all these little piles of stuff. Everybody has got his little own pile of stuff. Jesus' parable in this week's reading from Luke is usually known as the rich fool. It could be titled Bigger Barns, as the song we just sang, or even A Place for Your Stuff. Like Carlin's monologue, the parable portrays a situation of tragic ridiculousness. Jesus, responding to a request for financial advice from a person in the crowd, prefaces the parable with the warning against greed, which ancient philosophers believed to be a form of depravity, a lack of self-control. Then he goes and offers a saying that the Bible translates in English as, "One's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." The parable features 2 prime characters. Along with the rich man, God makes a very rare parabolic appearance here. As in the parables of the prodigal son and the unjust judge, the technique of inner monologue gives us insight into the man's character by letting us overhear his reasoning. A storage issue about space becomes also a preservation issue about time. The man speaks to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." The rich man's logic is logical, but a costly solution. "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods." At this point, the rich man's selfish strategy evokes our scorn and our own feelings of smug superiority. But the next revelation, we begin to not only question his judgment, but also slightly nervously on his behalf. "And I will say to myself, my soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." And we remember our 401ks, our pensions, and all the things that we've stored up for our own self-maintenance. And we then begin to hear what this parable is also about, a certain anxiety about time, the fear of not having enough, of running out. You see, the higher capacity barn will provide the security that will allow his soul to relax. Indeed, today, there's a storage industry and an anxiety industry and also an accompanying decluttering industry. all directed towards making it possible for us to relax, to eat, drink, and be merry. The space-time problem becomes moot as God informs him that his life is over and he won't be keeping any of his stuff. No euphemisms, no gentleness. God comes in and says, "You fool, this very night your life is demanded of you. And the things you've prepared, what's going to happen to them? They're not yours anymore." We can see instantly how fervent but misguided is the rich man's logic, is our logic. We laugh. As with George Carlin's monologue, we are laughing at ourselves, our pockets, our purses, our houses, and no end to it all. But when the rich man gets the bad news, it dawns upon us that we, too, may be fools, carrying, covering, locking up our stuff, trying to stave off death by insulating ourselves with wonderful plastic tchotchkes from China. Perhaps this practice of acquiring and consuming, building and storing, only increases the idiocy and intensifies our fear. Jesus and George Carlin use the same rhetorical strategy to jolt us out of our own insanity. Maybe life isn't about trying to find the place for all your stuff. Maybe it's not about the abundance of your possessions at all. Maybe there's a different way. There could be a real alternative. What if life is about a different sort of capacity building? Not that capacity for consumption or stuff, but about the capacity to be present to one's own life, to stop running, to breathe, to be present with all of the fears about insecurity, to be present with our own mortality, to be present to the gratitude of the abundance of our lives. What if life's goal is not about filling the hole inside of us, but instead becoming whole? This question about capacity should not be related to our insatiable appetites, but it's about getting to the true heart of the matter. What if instead of creating external storage capacity, we created internal capacity? I'm wondering this morning, how do we create emotional capacity? How do we create relational capacity? How do we clear space for gratitude and love and joy and peace? What would it be like to feel so safe and secure in ourselves, to be so unified and whole that we could freely share our abundance with others who are in need? Others who desperately just need to be seen sometimes, let alone given a cloak to wear or some food or some water. What would the world look like if we were serious about this? Maybe there wouldn't be any Gazas. There wouldn't be those walls we erect to keep our stuff safe. A world without anxiety would be an amazing place, wouldn't it? There's a story that I love that is preserved from the Desert Fathers and Mothers, those early Christians who went out into the wilderness to be present with those fears and deprivations, to create some capacity for compassion, some capacity for God to dwell in them and they in God. The story goes, a brother asked a certain old monk, a mentor of sorts, saying, "Would you let me keep these 2 gold pieces for myself against some infirmity of the body? If I were to get sick or old, could I keep this?" The old man, seeing his thought, that he was wishful to keep them, said, "Even so." And the brother, going into his cell, was torn by his own thoughts, saying, "I'm thinking and wondering, did the old monk tell me the truth or not? And rising up again, he came to the old man in penitence and asked him, "For God's sake, will you tell me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Okay, I added that part. It's actually not. They didn't use that back then. "Will you tell me the truth? For I'm tormented thinking about these 2 gold pieces." The old man said to him, "I saw that your will was set on keeping them, so I told you to keep them. I don't think it matters unless it matters to you. But indeed, it's not good to keep more than what the body needs for the day. If you had kept those 2 gold pieces, in them would have been your hope. And if it should happen that they were lost, how should God have any thought for us? Let us instead cast our thoughts upon God, since it is God's nature to care for us. Give us this day our daily bread, as we heard last week. It's a simple notion, and yet it's one we just don't want to face, because it means being dependent, interdependent on one another and upon God. But today, this morning, we are invited like teenagers to heed the call of wisdom and to align our wills with the divine will. For the very root of our hunger for stuff and security is a desire for wholeness. St. Augustine once said that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. All of us are seeking rest. Rest for our weary souls. Not bigger barns, just peace and true security and true wholeness. We can only discover that hidden wholeness when we listen to the yearnings of our hearts. Yes, to relax, but not by eating and drinking and being merry in the traditional sense, but by resting in God, to secure our value, to know that we're good, very good, just as we are, that we need not to prove anything, that no amount of stuff, no number in our bank accounts will ever be enough to make our hearts rest, truly rest. This morning, we're sitting at the table. We've put a lump of food, a lump of worry, a lump of concern on our plates, and God is graciously smiling at us, inviting us to learn the lesson we need to learn. Maybe just take a little. Just start a little bit. See how you feel then. If you need more, I've got a lot for you. I've got all the abundance you need. I hope your time sitting at the table this morning won't go on for hours. Let us take the wisdom that God so graciously gives to us and open our eyes and see the goodness of God's love and grace as a parent who just wants us to align our wills